Hello, and welcome to Module 8. This week, we're focusing on branded video and how brands can create video content that actually connects with audiences. Video has become a central part of social media communication, but simply creating a video does not make it strategic. Throughout this lecture, I want us to think about four basic questions. Who are we trying to reach? What are we trying to accomplish? What story or message will connect with that audience? And finally, how will we know whether the video worked? We'll also look at different types of branded video content, how to make video more discoverable, and how to measure its performance. As with everything we've discussed throughout the semester, the emphasis is going to be on strategy rather than simply creating content for the sake of creating content. Let's begin with why video matters. Video can serve many different purposes within a social media strategy. It can help a brand build awareness, generate engagement, explain something that may be difficult to communicate through text alone, and encourage audiences to take action. It can also help humanize a brand. Through video, audiences can see people, hear voices, observe demonstrations, and experience stories in ways that are difficult to achieve with only a static post. But notice that these are all different objectives. A video designed to build awareness may look very different from one designed to generate a sale. So, our starting point should never simply be, we need a video. The question should instead be, what role will video play in our larger communication strategy? One of the biggest mistakes brands can make is treating social video like a traditional ad that has simply been uploaded to a digital platform. Video gives us much more flexibility than that. We can show rather than simply tell. We can demonstrate how something works. We can introduce people behind a brand. We can tell stories about customers or communities. We can create a narrative that gives audiences a reason to keep watching. That doesn't mean every video needs to be dramatic or cinematic. A 20-second demonstration can tell a story just as effectively as a 5-minute branded film if it is appropriate for the objective. The important point is that the video or the story has a strategic purpose. We aren't telling stories simply because storytelling sounds creative. The story should help communicate something meaningful around the brand. Now, this slide connects directly to what we discussed earlier in the semester when we defined our target audience. One of the easiest traps in social media is starting with the platform. Someone says, we need to be on TikTok or we need to make a YouTube video. But that's backward. Start with the audience. Who are we trying to reach? What do they care about? What questions do they have? What problems are they trying to solve? What kinds of content are useful or interesting to them? Then consider the objective. What do we want this particular audience to know, feel, or do after encountering the video? Once we understand those things, we can make a much more informed decision about the format and the platform. Strategy determines the platform. The platform should not determine your strategy. Now, something to remember is there isn't one formula that guarantees a successful video, but there are several characteristics we should consider. First is relevance. The content needs to matter to the audience. Next is clarity. Audiences should be able to understand the central idea without having to work unnecessarily hard to figure out what the video is trying to communicate. Story gives people a reason to continue watching, while value gives them something in return for their attention. Authenticity is also important. The video should feel credible for the brand rather than appearing as though the brand is simply copying whatever happens to be popular at that moment. And finally, there is action. What role does a video play in moving us toward our objective? These elements work together. A beautiful video that isn't relevant to the target audience is not necessarily an effective branded video. Now, this is an important distinction. Audiences don't open social media because they're hoping to encounter more advertising. They are looking for information, entertainment, connection, inspiration, or something else that provides value to them. So, branded content needs to consider both sides of the exchange. From the audience's perspective, perhaps the video teaches them something. Maybe it solves a problem, entertains them, inspires them, or gives them a new perspective. At the same time, the brand needs to receive value. The content might increase awareness, strengthen positioning, generate engagement, or encourage some type of action. The strongest branded video accomplishes both. If the content only benefits the brand, it can feel like an interruption. If it only benefits the audience but has no meaningful connection to the brand or its objectives, then we also need to question whether it is strategically effective. Once someone begins watching, we need to give them a reason to stay. Think about this in four parts. First, we need a hook. That doesn't mean clickbait. It means giving the audience a legitimate reason to pay attention. Then we develop the idea. Depending on the video, this might involve a demonstration, a story, a problem, an explanation, or even tension that makes viewers curious about what happens next. Then there needs to be payoff. If you promised something at the beginning, deliver it. Finally, when appropriate, give the audience a clear next step. That might be visiting a website, learning more, sharing the content, subscribing, purchasing, or simply remembering a particular message. The key is that we earn attention throughout the video. Getting someone to click is not enough if they leave 3 seconds later. We talked about emotion in Module 6 when we examined social sharing, and that concept carries directly into video. Emotion can help content become more memorable and meaningful. A video might create curiosity, joy, surprise, empathy, inspiration, or another emotional response. But we have to be careful here. The goal isn't simply to make people feel something. The emotion should support the message and make sense for the brand. If a brand creates an emotional video that gets millions of views, but no one remembers who created it or why the story mattered to the brand, we have a strategic problem. So ask yourself, what do we want the audience to feel? And why is that feeling relevant to what we're trying to communicate? Authenticity is another word that gets used frequently in social media, sometimes without much explanation. For our purposes, think about authenticity as consistency and credibility. The video should sound and feel like the brand. That doesn't mean every piece of content needs to look identical. Brands can adapt their execution to different platforms and audiences, but the underlying identity should remain recognizable. This is particularly important when brands try to participate in trends. Not every trend makes sense for every organization. You don't want the audience thinking, why is this brand doing this? Adapt to the platform, but don't lose the brand in the process. Another strategic decision involves video length. Short form video works well when the idea can be communicated quickly. It can be effective for demonstrations, simple messages, quick entertainment, trends, or frequent content. Long form video gives you more room for explanation, storytelling, interviews, education, or more complex subjects. But I don't want you to think of short form as automatically better because people supposedly have short attention spans. People will spend considerable time with content they find valuable. The question is whether the length is justified by the content. Don't stretch a 30-second idea into 5 minutes. At the same time, don't force a complex story into 15 seconds simply because short form video happens to be popular. Here, we return again to our objectives. If your primary objective is awareness, you may want something relatively short and attention getting. If you're trying to educate an audience, a demonstration or tutorial may make more sense. If engagement is the goal, you might develop a recurring series or community focused content that encourages participation. For conversion, product demonstrations, testimonials, or videos that clearly communicate value may be appropriate. And if you're trying to build trust, behind the scenes content, expert voices, or customer experiences might be useful. There is no universally best video format. There is only the format that best supports your audience and your objective. Now, I want to introduce a framework that can help us organize branded video content: Help, Hub, and Hero. This framework gives us three broad categories. Help content provides useful information and often answers questions audiences are already asking. Hub content is recurring content designed to keep audiences engaged with the brand over time. Hero content represents larger moments, such as a major campaign, launch, event, or piece of high impact creative content. The important thing is that brands shouldn't assume everything needs to be a hero video. In fact, much of the content that creates ongoing value for audiences may come from help or hub content. Let's take a deep dive into these content areas. Help content begins with the audience's needs. What are people searching for? What questions do customers repeatedly ask? What problems can the brand help them solve? A beauty brand might create tutorials. A technology company might explain how to use a feature. A financial organization might answer common questions about budgeting or credit. This type of content can be particularly valuable because it may continue helping people long after it is initially published. It also connects naturally with search and discoverability because you're creating content around questions people are already asking. So instead of beginning with, what does the brand want to say? Help content often begins with, what does our audience want to know? On the other hand, hub content is about consistency. This might be a recurring video series, a recognizable format, or content organized around themes which matter to the audience. The benefit is that audiences begin to understand what they can expect from the brand. But consistency doesn't mean repetition. You can maintain a recognizable format while continuing to introduce new stories, topics, people, or ideas. You also want to pay attention to audience response. Which episodes or topics perform well? What questions are viewers asking? What seems to keep people engaged? Hub content should evolve based on what you're learning about your audience. At the same time, hero content sits at the other end of the spectrum. These are the larger moments when the brand wants to generate significant attention. That could be a major product launch, an important campaign, an event, a seasonal moment, or a larger creative story. Hero content may require more resources and promotion than your everyday content. But I want to emphasize that hero does not simply mean expensive. Spending a large amount of money on a video does not automatically make it strategically important or effective. A hero moment should connect to something meaningful in the brand strategy and give audiences a compelling reason to pay attention. Creating a good video is only part of the job. People also need to find it. This is where discoverability becomes important. Think carefully about your title. Does it clearly communicate what the video is about? Does it reflect language your audience might actually use? Keywords, captions, descriptions, and relevant hashtags can provide additional context. Visual packaging matters too. A thumbnail or opening frame can influence whether someone catches or chooses to watch. This is especially important because social media platforms increasingly function as search environments. People aren't only scrolling through feeds, they're actively searching for recommendations, explanations, reviews, tutorials, and other information. So, when creating video, ask yourself, if someone needed this information, how might they search for it? Optimization goes beyond simply inserting a few keywords. We need to consider search intent. What is the person actually trying to accomplish when they search for this topic? We also need to consider platform signals. Platforms may look at factors such as whether people continue watching, engage with the content, or appear to find it relevant. Then think about the way the video is packaged. The title, opening, thumbnail, caption, and description should work together rather than make different promises. And finally, optimization is an ongoing process. Use the information you receive after publishing. If audiences consistently leave at a particular point, that tells you something. If one topic performs especially well, investigate why. Performance data should help improve the next piece of content. We also need to think about distribution. One of the ideas we discussed earlier in the course was paid, earned, shared, and owned media. Those concepts apply directly here. Your owned channels give you places to distribute your video. Paid promotion can help extend the content to targeted audiences. Earned sharing or media coverage can extend its reach even further. Influencers and other partners, which we discussed in Module 7, can also become part of the distribution strategy. You might also use remarketing to reconnect with people who previously interacted with your brand. The key point is that publishing a video is not the same thing as distributing it strategically. Before you launch, know how the audience is supposed to encounter your content. Once the video is live, we need to determine whether it worked. And once again, the metric depends on the objective. If awareness was the goal, reach, impressions, and views may be useful. But views alone don't tell us very much about the quality of the viewing experience. That's why we may also examine watch time, audience retention, and completion. If engagement was the objective, comments, shares, and saves may be more meaningful. And if we wanted the audience to take action, we might examine clicks, website traffic, leads, or conversions. This is why I continue emphasizing SMART objectives and KPIs throughout the course. If you didn't clearly define what success looks like before creating the video, it becomes much harder to evaluate the results afterward. As we close this module, I want you to see branded video as part of the larger strategic process we've been building throughout the semester. Start with the audience, then identify your objective. Develop a story or message that gives that audience a reason to watch. Choose a format that makes sense for the message rather than simply following whatever format happens to be popular. Develop a distribution plan so that the right audience can actually encounter the video. And finally, measure what happened and use those results to improve your future content. The takeaway from this module is fairly simple. Effective branded video is not just about making something that looks good. It's about creating the right video for the right audience, for the right reason, and then determining whether it accomplished what you intended. Catch you on the next one.